have to be lending you my crutch so that your government could have stayed in power. But this is the true story of Mr. Ignatieff and his party.
Well, let me just be very clear about our position. Of course, parties will work together from time to time. But our position is very clear. The party that wins the most seats forms the government. That's how our democracy is supposed to work. If we form a conservative minority, I would be honored once again to govern Canadians. If we do not win the election, the Conservative Party will not govern this country. Mr. Ignatieff will not make that commitment. He will say that he will go and he's willing to accept a mandate from the other parties to govern. The party that wins the election has to govern. Otherwise, we will have a party dedicated to the breakup of the country, deciding who can or cannot form the government. Mr. Ignatieff.
Mr. Harper, that's completely false. If you get more seats than any other party, you get to try and meet the House of Commons. If I get...
Try.
Yeah, well, of course you got to win the conference of the House of Commons. If I get more seats, I'll try and win the conference of the House of Commons, and I'll work with other parties, but coalitions have it.
But it's not a matter of trying, Mr. Ignatieff. If you don't win the most seats, you don't get to form the government. That's how our system works.
I just said that. I just accept that.
You said in your statement that the party that wins the most seats will get to try first. Then you think you'd all get together, vote against it, and replace the government. That's not how our system is supposed to work in this country. People expect that the party that wins the most seats forms the government. Otherwise, we'll have a situation where small parties, including a party, the Bloc Québécois, dedicated to the breakup of the country, will decide which party goes into power. And I don't think that's good for this country.
Yes, but when you say that the party who finish with more seats form the government, you forgot something. That party had to have the confidence of the House with a speech from the throne, with a budget. It's not. I mean, otherwise there's no democracy at all. And I ask you again, you wrote a letter saying, don't launch an election. There's other option than an election if Paul Martin was to lose confidence. What were those options? Well, obviously, another prime minister said there's no other option than that.
I was very clear. The Conservative Party was not going to try and form government when it had lost the election. That simply doesn't make any sense. We seek to get a mandate from the Canadian people. We didn't get it in 2004. We got it in 2006, and we got it in 2008. And I hope we'll have it again. And I hope this time, I'm being quite frank, I hope it is a majority, because otherwise, you look at the debate we're having today, you can see we will be into a fifth election in no time at all. And I'm worried that, quite frankly, this country at some point, we're going to lose our focus on the economy, start raising taxes, start doing things that are not good for the long-run interest of the country just because of the short-run politics of a minority party.
So Mr. Harper's saying here, he's ready to accept that were he to get a majority, and I'm doing everything I can to stop it, because I'd like to lead this country, despite what Mr. Ignatieff said. But he could possibly do it with significantly less than 50% of Canadians supporting him. That's undemocratic. We need to change our electoral system. There's something wrong with the system. That when a party, the Bloc Québécois, we'll pick that example, has 1.3 million votes and gets 50 seats in the House. And we've got the Green Party that gets 900,000 votes, not that far behind the Bloc, they get 0 seats. It's time that we had proportional representation in this country so that we had a proper representation of everybody's point of view when it comes to that House of Commons. And by the way, while we're at it, let's stop the undemocratic Senate from doing what it does, and it should be abolished in our opinion, wasteful and expensive and a repository for political friends. Let's get rid of it, and let's test the Canadian people on that. Let's really fix the
Let me address Mr. Ignatieff. I understand.
Mr. Harper, hang on a second. I've got to be even with the time here. Mr. Ignatieff, you get to respond here.
The key issue is whether you can trust the politician with democratic authority. You're a prime minister who shut down Parliament twice. You were twice ruled against by the Speaker of the House of Commons. You lost the confidence of the House of Commons because you were found in contempt, because you didn't tell the House of Commons the truth. You're walking around now trying to claim the right to a majority. You haven't earned the right to a majority because you don't respect our democratic institutions. We've got to find a leader strong enough to live and accept and welcome democratic freedom in this country instead of trying to shut it down.
Well, Mr. Ignatieff, I know what your attacks are on this government. I simply don't accept the truth of those attacks. This government has governed through difficult times, through 5 years of minority government. We couldn't do that unless we respected Parliament, unless we respected the democratic process. We have a strong record on that. And what we are asking in an election we didn't want, in an election Canadians didn't want, we're asking Canadians to make the decision. Do you want to have this kind of bickering? Do you want to have another election in 2 years? Or do you want
bickering? This
do
isn't
you
debate,
want
Mr.
us to
Harper. This
focus
is
on the
democracy.
economy? We have before Parliament measures to help our most vulnerable senior citizens, measure to give credits, tax credits to families for arts programs, to help to extend work sharing, which is save the jobs of 300,000 workers, measures to help our manufacturing sector.
Once again,
That's what we want.
20 seconds left in this segment, Mr. Lee.
That's the mandate.
Mr. Lee,
I have to pick up on something Mr. Gnadev said. He said before you have to walk the walk and you have to be a strong leader and respect Parliament. I've got to ask you then, why do you have the worst attendance record in the House of Commons of any member of Parliament? If you want to be Prime Minister, you better learn how to be a member of Parliament first. You know, most Canadians, if they don't show up for work, they don't get a promotion.
Mr. Layton, I don't surrender to anybody in my respect for the institution of Parliament and my obligation to the people who put me there. So don't give me lessons about respect for democracy.
Where
Don't
were
give me
you?
lessons.
Where
don't
were
give
you
me
when I
lessons
was
for
there standing up to
Mr.
Mr. Harper and voting against his policies, and you weren't in the chamber? You missed 70% of the votes. I think you need to understand a little bit more about how our democracy works. That's my only point.
But Mr. Layton, if I
Hang on, Mr. Gnatty's got one last word on this, and we got to move on, or we're going to get way behind. 20 seconds to respond,
The
please.
key question here is to get a government that respects democracy, that respects Parliament, that respects citizens. You haven't earned a majority. You haven't even earned a minority. The question is, who's going to replace you, Mr. Harper? It's going to be, in my view, seeking the support for a liberal government enacting liberal policies.
Okay, that's it. That's it. Gentlemen, I got to move on. Question 4.